That brings us to our new segment where we break down something James Franklin said and we comment on it, whether it's kind of reading between the lines or just discussing something important he said. That's next. So Nate kind of hit on this earlier. We're going to skip over the conversation about the wide receivers because that third wide receiver position and how that has gone, we got to that earlier today. This one was the one where I was like, okay, I need some context. I need my experts here to tell me what's James Franklin talking about. He was asked about Khalil Dinkins and the depth tight ends standing out, who has played well, how have they done so far? And this is his response, which very shortly stops talking about Khalil Dinkins as far as I can
To your
tell.
point, when you guys asked earlier about a guy that's standing out, Khalil, I think, would fall into that category. He's been really good. But one of the things I talked to, the guys about is, one of the things I believe in, and sometimes these guys don't understand because this is the only place they've ever been, so they don't know, but like everybody's getting a ton of reps. And that doesn't happen everywhere. A lot of times, even in spring ball, not everybody's getting reps. And same thing in training camp. Everybody's getting reps. And then some of these guys are getting a ton of reps because there's injuries. And then they either don't know what they're doing or they want to be dramatic about the amount of reps they're getting. And nobody cares. This isn't high school anymore. Nobody cares. Get the job done. And then on top of that, these are the same guys that during the fall are going to be complaining that they're not getting reps. They got the reps right now. They need to take advantage of them and show everybody that they got a chance to compete here at a high level. And that's kind of the adjustment right now for a lot of the mid-semester guys, but really also a lot of the freshmen last year that may not have played a bunch. They got to understand what they have to do and how they have to compete at this level to be successful day in and day out.
So is that that's he sounds a little hoarse there. I don't know if it's spring allergies or if that was what he was yelling at the team after practice before he came to see us. Nate, what do you take away from that conversation?
Look, that's what he does. It's messaging, right? It's, hey, whoever had that conversation with me on the team kind of complaining or wasn't happy with how things were going this spring or had an issue with how things were going last year, because look, he talked about that in November, right? I remember one of the Wednesday press conferences, he talked about how I actually asked him in one of the rare questions that I ask during a press conference. I asked him about how the red shirts were coming along and whether or not there was ever like how the response of what the response is of those players, right? As a guy who's going through a red shirt and has to debate whether or not to take it off late in the season. And he brought up the point. He said, look, like the conversation changes pretty dramatically where everybody at the beginning of the season in the true freshman class wants to play. And then they realize that their opportunities are limited, and over the season, the tone changes. They don't want to lose their red shirt, to lose their eligibility by just being a role player, by just being a guy who excels on special teams, for instance, right? Like that's not how guys want to spend that first year, but they don't make that clear until late in the season. But the underside of that is, yeah, there's a lot of gripes. There's a lot of unhappy guys on the front side of the season when they're going through that process because they want to be playing. And so I thought that last night's comments were a little bit of an addendum to that, right? It's the bookend on that comment saying, okay, well, that happened last year. That was your stance last year. Now you got it. Now you're over here and we're going to give you a bajillion reps this spring. You need to take advantage of that. You need to be, not just happy with it, but you should be thriving. So you can't have it both ways. And, it's an interesting dynamic for him to play with, but certainly putting the message out there to anybody who feels that way, like, hey, this is how it's got to be. Otherwise you're not suited for this grind, like for what Penn State football is supposed to be.
So kind of jogging my memory here, and maybe we don't want to bring up the players that speculate on who he might be talking about. But a guy on the reverse that we have seen them praise for a lot of the things that you just described, Nate. Fitz, is that why Cam Miller comes up so much? A guy who has committed to being as good as he can on special teams, got some reps last year in kind of cleanup situations. Outside of his talent and the excitement about him playing corner, also is it the buy-in that they also want to then prop up as an example for young guys of, if you're going to be here, we want you to be grinding behind the scenes like Cam Miller.
Yeah, and it's understanding the importance of things like special teams, and Cam Miller kind of latched onto that because he wasn't going to play at corner last year, and I think he'd be the first to tell you that. And he saw the opportunity there, with those guys, with Joey Porter leaving, gives you an opportunity to step in and be that fourth guy. That fourth guy has a lot of value and is going to get a lot of reps and is going to be on the practice field a lot, with Kalen King and Storm Duck and Johnny Dixon. So I think that that's what plays into it. It's very interesting. Going back to what Nate said, is these guys are such big fish. Like, even the guys that we rate at the bottom of the class, that we say this kid needs a year or two, maybe even more, to get ready to actually step on a Big Ten field, they don't feel that way, and they shouldn't. That's part of why they've gotten to where they've gotten in the first place. And it's hard. You see, some guys don't make it. Malik McNeil didn't make it through the first year. Nate Bruce made it through 2 practices. It's very hard to get past that. And for James Franklin to go into that, talking about tight ends, I think it's a very interesting scenario here, because we joke about the third tight end being a hotly contested thing, and the audience for that is a little bit smaller than when we're talking quarterbacks. But it is very important, because you've got Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren, both of whom are battling injuries and not in the lineup right now. So a giant opportunity for Khalil Dinkins, for Jerry Cross, maybe for Joey Schlaffer. You've got these guys that haven't really been fully accustomed to what it takes to be a starter, getting starters reps or getting first and second team reps. That's such a big jump. And I don't know that you can grasp that fully at times. And I think that's an interesting thing there, because at the end of the tunnel, when Theo and Tyler are back, those guys are going to be your starters. So it'll be really interesting to see how Khalil Dinkins, what he makes of this opportunity for him, because it sounds like he's doing a really good job of it. What he does when he goes back to being the third guy, that's the little things that you're trying to pick up. And you said it before, messaging, testing guys, getting the guys to be frustrated and uncomfortable, because that helps them grow. I think that's all part of this right now. And that's kind of what we're seeing in the spring, especially for guys that aren't used to getting reps, and now they're getting a lot of reps.